Welcome to Liminal. I am Maggie Taylor, and this is my first episode. Meet Hekate, Queen of the Crossroads. I thought it was appropriate to start with one of my guides, the goddess Hekate, or more accurately, the first time that I heard her name, I said, who the heck is Hecate? Earlier this year, going through a very challenging time in my personal life, I had a profound dream experience with my mother's mother, my grandmother in spirit. So during this experience, which at this point is not new for me, I was very comfortable with her, and I found that we together were brought back to a moment when I was about 7 years old, and I was having lunch with her, my grandmother, and my mother and my younger sister at Lord and Taylor in Manhasset. And everything, of course, is very clear. I can see the table. Everything's beautiful. There's yellow birds painted and decorative bird cages. Everything's polished and very 1982. So I'm standing with my grandmother in spirit and myself at this age, witnessing this luncheon. I was like standing inside of a memory, but I was also observing it as the woman I am now. So my grandmother and I are standing to the side witnessing, and there are really no words spoken, but an understanding through her was transmitted to me. And that was, we are here and we are there. So she was explaining to me through transmission that in that luncheon moment, we are standing on the side at this age, witnessing it then and now. So the transmission was really a depth of activation of no separation in time and space. So through this, I communicated that I was needing some help from her. Um, and I don't remember speaking aloud. She simply like received what I was asking, and so we went to another higher space where we began working with my soul contracts in this area that I was deeply struggling in. And this part becomes more blurry and unable to like see all of the angles of it, but I knew what we were doing. And I knew that this was very important. And I was also like, oh, like there was this awakening and understanding, like, of course, she is the one to be helping me through this. I don't recall all of the details other than I felt some relief. And as I began to wake up, I was returning into my body, and I heard my grandmother, this was in audience, so clear audience, very clearly say to me as I was waking up, work with Hecate. And those are the words. I woke up and I sat up and I thought, who the heck is Hecate? Now, please understand that this experience is just earlier this year. I have been around the block spiritually. So, could I have heard that name somewhere? Absolutely. But did I know who she was and what she stood for? I did not. So, what made this very surprising once I started to research and learn about the goddess Hecate was that my grandmother herself in life was a deeply devoted a Catholic. So Hecate was not someone that she ever spoke about during her physical life. The Blessed Mother and Jesus and the apostles, absolutely. But to my knowledge, she had no conscious relationship with Greek goddesses or um, pagan stuff or spiritual traditions associated with Hecate. So when I began researching, my mind was kind of blown because I encountered like magic and witchcraft and spirits and the underworld. And this was not the kind of message that I would have expected to receive from her in form, but I'm very aware that in spirit, there's a different understanding and perspective than there is here in form. So, with that, the message to work with her came so clearly that I was fascinated and continued to research on my own the way that I do. And I began to really pray and speak with the information that I was receiving on this beautiful goddess in a way that felt like it was in integrity and appropriate for me and the way that I have a relationship with spirit and my spirituality. So as I want to pause here for a second because this is important before I go into the depth of Hecate. I do not seek out things that frighten me. I don't watch scary movies that got ruined when I was 6 years old and watched Poltergeist at a friend's house. Um, I really make a conscious effort not to fill my mind or any of my attention with frightening imagery. I rarely, if ever, watch the news, and it's not because I pretend that this doesn't exist. Believe me, I go very deep into the darkness, but I'm very intentional about what I allow into my mind and into my energy field. So I also understand through my own history of learning and working with A Course in Miracles that the human experience really has two primary energies. There's love and fear. So I do my best to recognize when fear is leading, and I consciously take efforts to return myself back to love. So when I first started looking for videos on Hecate, I immediately was like, oh, absolutely not. So I decided to do my own research and keep it more on an ancient spiritual wisdom tradition as opposed to a lot of what is more in the New Age world with Hecate now. So historically, Hecate is very associated with the word witch, but witchcraft itself is not really like a single religion or belief system or practice. It is a enormous umbrella that covers like many traditions, cultures, and tensions. But historically, practices labeled as magic, quote unquote, could include prayer or herbalism, healing, protection, divination, ritual, dreams, interpretation, working with the natural cycles, communication with the divine. Um, and some people do work with Hecate. She's also known as the goddess of the witches. Some who work with her do identify as witches, and some do not. So with that, my own path is like rooted in Reiki and calling and unconditional love and working with love first in the deep aspects of yogic and meditation, energy healing, and what is in the highest and best for all. And I'm very, very comfortable exploring deities and different traditions that I don't need to adopt a label. I use my own connection to spirit to discern. So through this, as I began to work with Hecate directly, I felt very comfortable doing so through the integrity of my own spiritual practice. So learning more about who she is. So she is a deity that is far more complex and expansive than if you just Google her name quickly, that will originally like come up. She is an ancient pre-Olympian goddess whose origins may reach back to Anatolia before she became known as the as one of the Greek pantheons. So, one of the earliest literary, we'll try that again. One of the earliest literary appearances of her, she is not presented as a goddess of witchcraft. She is deeply honored and holds influence across the earth, the sea, and the sky. And over time, she became increasingly associated with magic, knights, the liminal world, spirits, and the underworld. But she was also honored as a protector of homes and gateways, a guardian of travelers, a guide through transitions, and a bearer of light. She is the keeper of the key, which many of her aspects, as I began to learn about them, really blew my mind away based on where in my life I have revered keys and some of her other things, like she is the bearer of twin torches. She is often accompanied by two sacred dogs, they're black, not white like mine, and depicted in triple form, um, facing more in one direction at once. So this imagery of her will show that she can see three directions at one time. So her images were placed in like doorways and gates and crossroads. She is known as the Queen of the Crossroads. So the spaces where she shows up are liminal spaces. They're not spaces that are fully there or they're fully here. She stands between worlds. So, with those three directions, Hecate stands between the past, the present, and the future. She's between endings and beginnings. She is between what we know and what has not yet been revealed. So, within ancient spiritual traditions, descending into the underworld could represent entering the mystery, communicating with ancestors, retrieving wisdom, encountering the parts of ourselves that we have hidden, or allowing an old identity to die so that something new, who you really are, can emerge. So Hecate can enter the darkness because she carries her own light. So that distinction became absolutely essential for me. First, her name showing up when I'm at this huge crossroad in my own life. But when we meet ourselves in crossroads, we're meeting ourselves in a space between who we are and what is going to happen, who we are going to become next. And in order to make it to that next level, we need to make a choice. And sometimes that choice requires us to travel through some of our own darkness so that Hecate can enter the darkness because she carries her own light was fascinating and deeply resonated with me. So she doesn't ask you to like go into the dark and become consumed by the dark. She teaches you that you can enter the unknown or what is frightening without surrendering what lights you up. So she has the torches, so she illuminates. Her keys can help us open or unlock parts of ourselves or parts of ourselves in between. Her dogs that she travels with act as protection and companions. And her presence at the crossroads, as I mentioned, reminds us that we have a choice. Okay, so as I'm learning and I'm working with her and praying and meditating, my grandmother's message to me was a liminal experience. She met me in between my childhood and my present life, between memory and consciousness, between the physical and spiritual worlds, between the life that I had known long before this issue that I have now had now, and the life that I was asking for help in entering. So she met me in this liminal space and directed me toward the goddess who guards it. So part of the reason why like I said this earlier, I think that I'm here talking to you is because of this experience. So in many contemporary Hecatean traditions, there is a understanding that we don't seek out Hecate, that Hecate finds us. So she may enter our awareness through a dream, a symbol, an unexpected expected encounter, repeated name, or quiet but persistent pull towards her. So was my experience. Um, Hecate found me. I didn't summon her. I became aware that she had already reached toward me. And then since then, and there's been so many other occurrences since this time of where she has supported and shown up, she has become deeply special to me through some of the choices that I have made throughout my life, and certainly continue to make now. Those choices, although not always easy, will come back to me being true and my most authentic self. So, what is so beautiful about Hecate is that she's not going to choose the road for us, but she'll help carry the light. She doesn't illuminate your entire journey. She carries a torch, and it's like she's pointing in the direction, right? So she gives you enough light to see what's true, recognize the threshold that's before, um, but gives you, of course, the free will to take the next sovereign step. So she protects the crossing, but the choice remains ours. So, so Hecate is also associated in later esoteric traditions with the Strophalos, which is often called Hecate's wheel. So for me, the wheel represents spiraling pathways that represent the truth that transformation rarely happens in a straight line. If you look at the wheel itself, it looks a bit like a labyrinth. We can circle in the same lesson more than once, but we don't return, even if we're cycling the same lesson, we're not returning as the same person. Every time we move through a lesson, we return with greater awareness, deeper wisdom, and another opportunity to choose consciously again. The wheel is a reminder that there's no beginning or end. The center of the wheel is stillness. So, although the world continues to move around, if we go into our own center, there is knowing and there is sovereignty, and there is a place in the center that always recognizes what is true. And that is so common among all of the yogic traditions. And then another thing about Hecate that I mentioned earlier is that she carries keys. So the key is something that opens something that wasn't able to be opened before, right? And the key isn't that you have the key, the door wasn't there. The door is there. The spiritual understanding is there. The key is the representation of the choice to open to information, to energy that is already within you. So the key is just such an amazing liminal space. It's that space between when you're unlocking the door. That's that space between knowing and choosing, imagining, becoming, intuition and action. So we go deeper into who is Hekate. The deeper question isn't really who is Hecate. It's for yourself. If you've made it this far, and if you hear those noises, it's my dogs are very excited that I'm standing here talking. So, who is Hecate? The deeper question is, why has Hecate entered your awareness now? If you've made it this far through, something is calling to you. So, what threshold are you standing within? When we stand at a threshold, there is a choice in our identity or agreement or relationship or pattern that needs and wants and energetically is being pushed to shift. So, discerning here in your own experience, what is one area in your life that needs illuminating? And with, of course, the blanket of unconditional love and highest and best, asking for support in that area, in that illumination. What possibility in your life is beginning to reveal itself? So when we're making those choices through the crossroads, we cannot make the choice with the end result in mind because we have zero control over where that next road leads. The choice is in if you're choosing one way or another, which is the choice that meets you in the most loving, whole, and authentic version of yourself. So, what identity, agreement, relationship, or pattern is complete? What truth do you need more illumination in, or what is being illuminated? Are you looking towards that illumination, or are you looking backwards? What possibility is beginning to reveal? And how can you, in a crossroad, okay, in the crossroads, the choice is the next best choice and what is the most loving decision for yourself and for those around you. But being authentic and in truth with who you are and what is real for you is imperative in making that next choice. We cannot make a choice saying, I know that this road that I'm going to take will work out. We have to make the choice from the depth of our own intention and our heart's loving energy towards ourself, and that will open where the road goes. There are no guarantees. If you look back at Hecate's wheel, they all, the circle of the wheel, they all end in the same place. And to me, that depiction of the wheel is a perfect example of the fact that you cannot make a wrong choice. You will be redirected and come back to learn the lesson again. But I have found that with every choice that I have made that is rooted in being truthful and honest with myself, despite what other people on the outside might think, that has built my confidence and opened pathways and possibilities that I never could have imagined. So, as you if you decide to work with this energy, listen closely, pay attention to your dreams, Notice the symbols that are appearing around you. Notice your animals. Notice your light. Notice what is ending and what is like asking to begin. Remember that no guide or teacher or spiritual presence can take away your internal sovereignty. So the truest guide leads you to believe deeply in yourself. So from here, my goal after this is to create a multi-dimensional healing meditation working with Hekate at the crossroads. And the crossroads could be, like I said earlier, anything in your life. It could even be developing your gifts. Um, so within this experience, my goal is to have us meet Hekate, her twin torches, work with the dogs and the key and the wheel, and see where that experience goes from there. Um, Remember that Hecate illuminates just enough for you to make your own sovereign choice. So the key is already here, it's already in your hand. You can choose. So, with that, I'll share the meditation, the healing session when it is ready. Thank you for being here with me, and welcome to the space in between the liminal.